All right. Thanks everyone for coming. Good to see so many of you here. It's not working. Oh, let's go back. Yeah, here we go. So I'm gonna be talking about my various Bitcoin pizza moments over the year and how I discovered Bitcoin back in 2009 and worked with Satoshi for a bit. Then I'm gonna be talking about how my journey continues today with something a bit similar but a bit different, which is Nostr. And I'm a software developer. I spend most of my days alone with the computer. But I'll try to keep you guys entertained and maybe tell you something you don't know yet. So here is where my story starts. This is the campus of Helsinki University of Technology. It's a very beautiful place. This is where I was studying computer science back in 2009 when I was 20 years old. But I wasn't wasting too much time on the studying part. I spent a lot of time partying with friends and also I spent a lot of time alone with the computer, thinking about the world. And I'm quite passionate about freedom, liberty, as many of us, libertarian, you could say. But I was not very optimistic or enthusiastic about changing the world through politics. We would never get the majority of people vote libertarian. But instead I was inspired by changing the world through technology, like historically we had done with printing press and internet, and there was the pirate movement in Scandinavia that forced the media industry landscape to change. So I was thinking what would be the most impactful thing you could change, and I figured out it was money, because everything runs on money. And if you're on the top of that pyramid here, you have too much power over the society and the work and time and energy of other people. If you're the Federal Reserve, you have a lot of power over the whole world. And when the printing press exists, the temptation to use it will be always irresistible. And also, if you control the banking system, you can censor or confiscate other people's money. And that's too much power to give to any single entity, in my opinion. So I went looking for alternatives, and I found this stuff like Pecunix, Liberty Reserve, eBullion, eGold, Liberty Dollar. You might know some of them. You might want to look them up if you don't know them. Quite cautionary tales, I would say. They were all shut down by the government, or they were exit scams, basically defrauding their customers, a bit like banks, but even less transparent and accountable. So no solution there. Then I went looking, probably Googling for peer-to-peer currency or something. And this came up. Bitcoin had been just published. You would find less than 10 Google results Googling for Bitcoin back then. So I took some time to digest the white paper. It made sense, so I sent email to this Japanese guy, Satoshi Nakamoto. Although I doubt it if he's really Japanese, because his English was so perfect. So I sent him email. I just released our correspondence earlier this year. You can go check it out. It's linked on my Twitter. So I sent email to Satoshi and offered my help. He said he's not such a great writer. He's much better with coding. I don't know if he was talking about his writing or about his coding in that sentence, because I was a college kid who had learned English from video games. But he asked me to write some materials for the Bitcoin website, like the FAQ. So I said yes, and our exchange continued, and we ended up exchanging maybe a couple hundred emails over the years with Satoshi. And he also asked me to keep my Bitcoin node running, because back then there were only typically 5 or less people online in the network. And he wanted to make sure that there's always some point in the network to connect. So I kept my node running. In the options menu up there, there was a checkbox generate coins, which would make your CPU buzz. So I ticked the box, and it would generate, like on my laptop, maybe 6 blocks per day, or 300 bitcoins. But I had to turn it off when playing Counter-Strike. And I ended up mining maybe 55,000 bitcoins on my laptop over the years. But what happened, we'll find out. So first I helped with bitcoin.org and setting up the forums, including Bitcoin Talk Forum, which is here. How many of you guys have ever posted on Bitcoin Talk? A couple, yeah. That used to be the Bitcoin social media back then, and IRC as well. So I also got the Bitcoin source code compiled and made some contributions to the Bitcoin 0.2. Nothing super deep, I didn't touch anything protocol level. I did some user interface improvements. And I did some of the Linux porting as well. I wanted to get it running on my server so I could run a semi-automated exchange, which I set up later. And you guys might be familiar with this. This is the original Bitcoin pizza. And who was there? I'm this cat. So Laszlo bought these 2 pizzas for 10,000 bitcoins, and we still celebrate the Bitcoin Pizza Day, 22nd of May each year. So historical moment. And Bitcoin is oftentimes a good icebreaker, conversation starter, because many people seem to have these incredible stories about something crazy they bought back in the day. Maybe they bought something from Silk Road for 500 bitcoins, or maybe they lost or found a fortune in Bitcoin. So this might have been my first Bitcoin pizza. And this, as far as I know, this is the first known Bitcoin to USD transaction. So I sold 5,050 bitcoins to this guy who wanted to set up this Bitcoin exchange site, which also sold SpongeBob stickers. I sold it for $5. So here we are. Another Bitcoin pizza of mine. I think this email is related to me setting up bitcoinexchange.com. So yeah, back then you would casually send around 10,000 bitcoins. This is something I bought at a student party for 100 bitcoins from my friend, but it was worth it. My friend kept some of it, and later he gave me a bottle of wine. I guess this is my main Bitcoin pizza, 2011. I had gotten a real job the previous year, 2010, so I had less time to contribute for Bitcoin from there on. I was still maintaining bitcoin.org. But 2011, the exchange rate of Bitcoin peaked at $30. I sold some at the peak, around $15 to $30. I sold over 10,000 Bitcoins, which was more than half of my remaining Bitcoins at the time, to buy this studio apartment near Helsinki. I mean, it's not bad. I was 22 years or something, and I was really happy to have my own apartment. At least I got more than 2 pizzas, so can't really complain. I mean, the 55,000 Bitcoins today would make me like top 5 richest people in Finland. I guess it would be fun to be a billionaire, but I can't really complain. Like, life's good. You don't need to be rich to have a perfectly happy life. And like, thankfulness is so important. Like, I often think of Ross Ulbricht, and he's written a great deal about like forgiveness and thankfulness. You should go read it, and I hope he gets out. So in 2011, I resigned from my Fiat job, and then I went to Japan to visit Mt. Gox's office, among other things, and study Japanese for a couple months. I guess this counts as a Bitcoin pizza, because I had sold probably over 1,000 Bitcoins to fund the trip. This is the sunset from the Mt. Gox Shibuya office. Everything was good back then. People were smiling. This also happens to be the first Google office in Japan, in Cerulean Tower. Here's YubiKeys that Mt. Gox used to secure their user accounts, but that doesn't help when their server is hacked. Actually, Jed McCaleb offered to sell Mt. Gox to me back in, I think, 2010 or something. But I didn't want it. I knew that in Finland you would need a money transmitter license to hold customer funds. And I didn't also want the responsibility over other people's money, and I'm glad I didn't in retrospect. So they lost a ton of customer funds, but this year they returned maybe 15% of it or so. So people used to be angry, but now many people were just happy about the forced diamond hands. I had 10 Bitcoins there, so I got a fraction of it back, but it's not bad. This is from 2014. It's a Bitcoin mine in Finland, one of the first Bitcoin mines. Bitcoin had existed only in the virtual world for me for a long time. So it was mind-blowing and otherworldly to see this old steel factory with a 10 megawatt power line, with these cyber hornets mining this virtual currency. Yeah, it was some of the first ASICs in the world manufactured in Taiwan, where a friend of mine had gone to produce them with Bitfury. This was another surreal moment in 2014. This was Bitcoin Amsterdam. Met Gavin Andresen there as well. It was just surreal to see how big Bitcoin had become. And that year, Bitcoin reached $1,000 also. And Mt. Gox collapsed later that year, and Bitcoin crashed. In 2012, I started doing this project called Identify. It was a decentralized web of trust and a reputation system and a decentralized address book. I had floated the idea on the Bitcoin talk forums already in 2010. So I was hoping, whereas Bitcoin was an alternative to banks, a decentralized reputation system could be an alternative for courts in many cases, like a social force for good. We could use it to scale up the Dunbar's number. Social scalability is the term coined by Nick Szabo. You can look it up. Like we could have a global village community where people are nice to each other again, where you don't have the incentives to be nice to each other, even people are strangers. So that's something I started developing in 2012. I think I worked on it for like half a year. I got funded by this ASIC guy. It was not super different from Nostr actually, if you're familiar with Nostr. So basically you would accounts would be just key pairs, and you would just send content addressed messages in a peer-to-peer flooding network. But maybe my implementation was too complicated, so it didn't get a critical mass at the time. Then I was invited to join this startup, fintech startup in Finland, I think 2014, 2015. Joined as a co-founder. We were doing something similar to Revolut, trying to bring all the banking needs of everyone, all the unbanked people and whatever, under one account. We also had some like Bitcoin integration piloting, but MasterCard didn't like it. We never got it into production. We did some shitcoins, pardon me, like Ripple and Stellar experiments for fiat payment rails. We worked together with an Estonian bank to do a stable coin, but that was never launched either. But there's one slide missing, but at least we had the best parties. I had a great picture from a party, but it's not here, unfortunately. So the startup didn't work out, so I was invited to join another startup. Well, basically this startup, which was mostly funded by Tim Draper, was basically sponsoring my work on Identify, like do whatever you want. So I was building Identify on their stack. So it's again similar to Nostr. Just decentralized database syncing datasets between browsers. And accounts would be just public keys. No one can delete your account and so on. 2019, Iris. I decided social media is more of a familiar concept and a better place to start than web of trust or reputation database. So I renamed it to Iris and tried to solve the decentralized social media first. Very similar to Nostr stuff. So Iris means rainbow in Greek. It kind of symbolizes the plurality of voices, for the better or the worse. Iris is the colored part of the eye. Eyes are kind of essential for human communication. So it's fitting, and also happens to be the Greek goddess of rainbow and the messenger of gods. And it's this purple, pretty flower. Purple is the color of Nostr, so it's fitting in that sense as well. So 2022, Iris was not gaining traction again. Maybe the tech stack was too complicated. People often had problems, like basic UX problems, stuff not working, not syncing. So I was looking for a new project again back in around December 2022. But then Nostr happened. I think that's around the time when Jack Dorsey joined Nostr. It really got off the ground in a way. So I pivoted to Nostr. It was really easy for me to integrate because the stack and the concept was already so similar. So I started coding like crazy in December. You can see there's commits every day for like 3 months. And Iris used to be maybe one of the most popular web clients for Nostr back in the day. And the next year, March next year, I went to Nostrica in Costa Rica. It was a Nostr conference organized by Jack Dorsey again. Maybe 200, 300 people or so in a beautiful hippie venue with a river flowing through the place where you could go swim between the talks. That's also when I came back to the Bitcoin scene as well. Since then I've been going back to these events again. Happy to be here with you guys. And last summer I got a 1-year development grant from OpenSats. Jack Dorsey donated $5 million for Nostr development. Very thankful. My grant ended in the summer this year, just reapplied, so I'm hopeful I don't have to go back to the fiat world after this adventure. It's like the most meaningful work I've ever done. And last year there was this, Edward Snowden was using Iris. He sent me a direct message, which is unfortunately public information on Nostr, like metadata privacy is still lacking. We are working on it. I have already done like a signal style double ratchet improvement to that. So this was pretty cool. I need to print his message and put it on my wall probably. So you could call Nostr the Bitcoin of social media. I think accounts are just keepers. You don't need a phone number, you don't need email, you don't need a service provider. No one can deplatform you. And all the content is signed by the author, independently verifiable. So you don't need to trust Elon Musk's word that, yes, this is the president of the United States account. And Elon Musk cannot deplatform the US president. And then there's content addressing, which means the content is not addressed by its network location, which is censorable and not verifiable again. We have content addressing, like events are addressed by their content hash, which means you can verify that the linked content is actually what you get. The URLs can optionally have network locations, so you can find it. And this, there's no blockchain, no consensus. So there's the CAP theorem, consistence, availability, partition tolerance. So blockchains choose the consistency and availability, but not partition tolerance. And the latter is chosen by Nostr. We don't have consensus, so it's a bit different from what Bitcoiners are used to in some ways. And sometimes people criticize it when they cannot be assured that they're seeing someone's full message feed. But I don't think it's feasible or reasonable to sync all the social data in the world. You don't want to see everyone's posts. But together, these features enable all kinds of network topologies. Sometimes people criticize that the Nostr relay model is not scalable, but Nostr is not tied to any single network topology. You can always change it. You can change it send stuff peer-to-peer, even locally, like Bluetooth or pigeons or ham radio or satellites, whatever you want. Or it can be centralized service. If you want, it's still verifiable, and users can always change the service they use. And they can always change the client they want to use. I think we need to do more peer-to-peer, and I think that might be the direction where we're going. So right now we have relays which host your stuff, but running a relay can be expensive, and you can run into moderation problems. Currently, Nostr is only textual data, so it's not. You don't get so many like DMCA takedown notices or whatever. But I think we want to go into the file sharing direction as well, and that's where peer-to-peer will be useful. So users, we already have our devices and on-device storage space that we have paid for, and we have our ISPs, so there's no need to pay for the expensive content hosting somewhere. Like on the internet, there's the tragedy of popular content, that if your content becomes popular, then your hosting costs increase. And typically, the ad-funded model has been a solution to this. Like the ad revenue scales with the traffic, but it leads to other problems that you're probably aware of, like censorship. And I think peer-to-peer can be a great alternative. I think we're going to be able to have better selection than Spotify or YouTube, like the library that has all the media in the world. And it's just fun to be on Nostr. It feels like a bit like the early days internet. I think Edward Snowden distilled this pretty well in his book, this spirit of the early days internet, when we used BBSs or IRC or online forums, and it was great before smartphones and Facebook. And people used to go by their nicknames. I was Sirius on the forums, and somehow there was not this feeling of permanent record, and people spoke their mind, and it was more anarchist and more fun in some way. And I have the same feeling with Nostr. It's great. You should try if you haven't already. Then there's the social graph. It's an old concept from cypherpunks, like PGP, Web of Trust. But now we have it with Nostr. I think it's maybe the only good solution to decentralized spam prevention and moderation. Like you can see content from your follows and your second-degree follows, like people followed by your friends, and so on. And you can also share block lists, but all this is optional. You can always choose your own algorithm. So there's no centralized moderator deciding what you're going to see. And it can also be an alternative to address systems, like to DNS or whatever. Like DNS in Bitcoin terms is a shitcoin. Someone can take away your domain names, and it's a hierarchic federated system, centralized basically. With social graph, you can just type in someone's name, and you get a drop-down of results in your social graph. And depending on the application, it might redirect you to some IP address or social profile or something. Nostr loves Bitcoin. We have Bitcoin Lightning integration in most Nostr clients. We have steps like Lightning tipping for content. It's really great. I use Lightning many times a day these days. It's orange-pilled so many people. And it's something that the legacy social media are never really gonna have, I guess, for compliance reasons. And again, freedom feels good. It could be a great business model for application developers. So when you make an application that moves money, you can always take a cut to fund your development efforts. So something like marketplace applications would be very lucrative for developers. We just need to scale them up a bit. All the users of Nostr are Bitcoiners, basically, for the better or the worse. But I think we'll get there. I think you will be using Nostr and you will be happy, to quote World Economic Forum. I guess my time is over, so come talk to me if you want to hear the rest of the story. Happy to be there, happy to be here with you guys, and check out Nostr if you all haven't already. And thanks.